On a recent podcast, I was asked a question that I thought was really good, and it's provoked a lot of thinking. So to kick this video off, I want to ask it to you. On your screen right now is Arsenal's 11 from 22-23 that won every single league game it started. It was the 11 last year, and barring the likes of Jesus, Zinchenko and Saliba's injuries, who knows what might have happened. The question I was asked was simple. Other than Xhaka, which player from that 11 do you believe will be the next to permanently depart Arsenal Football Club? Most Arsenal fans would probably have told you we needed to do something in the midfield this summer, and we have done. However you see that playing out, Xhaka was an obvious area of growth potential despite his undoubted quality, but after that, on the surface, it's essentially asking how you improve on perfect, a team with no losses or draws. That's a very hard thing to answer, and will likely provoke a lot of different responses. Let me know your answer in the comments, but for me, I very quickly settled on an answer. Alexander Zinchenko. Now, this is the internet, where nuance comes to die. If I'd said I didn't like oranges, the first comment on this video will be, oh, so you hate apples. So I won't be able to stop all the, oh, so you hate Zinchenko comments on this videos, but for those interested, let me explain why I say that. I want to firstly state my admiration for the player in no uncertain terms. Zinchenko is world class in the second line, in possession, receiving with his back to goal, roaming around, progressing play. I see very few other players in world football who possess his specific talents in these zones of the pitch in possession. And if it were up to me, Zinchenko would be at Arsenal for the rest of his career, as I think he can offer us a great deal on and off the pitch. I'd say last season he was probably one of the main catalysts in us becoming title challengers, as he facilitated us moving to that 3-2 in build-up. He is that good. But that's quite a specific thing to be world class at. And my worries come when Zinchenko is asked to do different things in different game states, out of possession, as he's pulled into different areas of the pitch where he's less comfortable. To borrow a phrase from the brilliant Arsenal Vision podcast, other teams get to do tactics too. And other teams were targeting him. Last season, Arsenal had 16 losses and draws in total in all competitions. Zinchenko started in 10 of those, missing the losses to PSV, Brighton and Forest, and the draws against West Ham and Southampton, additionally only coming off the bench against City in the FA Cup. In the 10 games he started, most of those teams elected to attack down their right-hand side, our left-hand side. You could argue, in part, to target Zinchenko. Now, some of that is natural. That's where the spaces are likely to be for your opposition when our fullback is a midfielder in possession. But the problem is, it was an effective strategy. Goals from Bowen, Firmino, Madueke and Maddison spring to mind, as our left-hand side was targeted specifically and Zinchenko made errors. Mikel is aiming to make us more unpredictable this season and less easy to scout. As he said recently, it's not plan A, B or C, it's A1, A2 and A3. Next season, we'll be hoping to have the option to invert both sides where we didn't last season, be able to press man for man or zonally with less vulnerabilities further back profile-wise, in depth, or even sit deep and go long to a target, as Mikel has described too. For all of Man City's brilliant, intricate play, De Bruyne's first goal at the Etihad against us was a long ball up to a target in Erling Haaland. All of this is to avoid being predictable, and Rice, Havertz and Timber aid our progression there. When we're trying to compete at the very highest level, we have to be absolutely ruthless with any deficiencies in our team. They just can't exist, and they definitely can't be allowed to consistently cause us problems. In certain games, I think Zinchenko's profile is fine, but there's others where I worry about his defensive concentration, his ability in the duels, getting bypassed in transition up the pitch, and getting isolated and dragged wide. Other teams get to do tactics too. I'm not digging him out, every player has their weaknesses, and Zinchenko is a terrific player. But to make up those last 5 to 10 points, to deal with the best team in world football, we have to make some very tough calls in certain games. And I just can't see Zinchenko starting every single one. This summer, we've changed our left central midfielder to Havertz, it seems, so that makes me even more convinced there's a change at left back to balance that coming, at least in certain games. And Timber's arrival, with the ability to flip the dynamics, almost puts the nail in the coffin of the idea that Zinchenko is starting 50 to 60 games at left back next season, but more on that later. The reason I say I think Zinchenko will leave first, by the way, is because Zinchenko doesn't strike me as the kind of character who'll stick around somewhere he's not basically guaranteed to start every game. Unless he's guaranteed trophies every season, he feels to me like he might be the sort to facilitate a swift exit if he sees his game time is going to be limited. We all want to be valued and needed, and for me, I think that's one of the main reasons that Zinchenko left City, to be the main guy in a team. Because let's be clear, it wasn't to better his chance of winning trophies, much as we'd like to think so. We also have the problem of availability. Zinchenko missed 15 games last season through injury. I could be wrong, but that's what my gut tells me. But regardless, Arsenal have a problem to solve, and I think the solution to it might already be in our team. Looking at Havertz in pre-season and the spaces he occupies, I can't help but want to see Kieran Tierney in this team, and I wonder whether a pathway is opening up for him. I went early last summer, pre-Zinchenko, and said I didn't think Tierney was right for his long term, but teams are symbiotic. The dynamics have changed. Tierney's straight lines and razor-sharp delivery could make him perfect to play with Havertz, a more space invadery fill-in-wherever Roma type who can be a box presence for Tierney to find with his crosses, and Kieran's ability to play as the third centre-back with Timber inverting is enticing too. I don't completely rule that out. But the player I want to focus on for the rest of this video, and the player I think that will surprise you most next season, is Jakub Kiwior. I think Jakub Kiwior will play more minutes than we think on the left-hand side of our defence next season, and may even possibly usurp Zinchenko as our first choice, though I'm less sure about that. For the bonus content this week, I've looked more in depth at his games, playing nominally at left back in pre-season, and also at the end of last season, and that's available on Patreon and YouTube memberships for just £3 a month for that and loads of other benefits. But for our purposes, I want to boil it down to two simple reasons why we'll see a lot more of him: the player himself and the players arriving. Kiwior is uber technical. You see those people who waffle on and on, calling every single top-level player an elite technician, but trust me, I don't say that without seriously thinking he is a cut above the rest, especially most players that you might call centre-backs. I think many people might have woken up to it, hilariously, in the MLS skills game, but more pertinently, you should go and watch him play in the midfield for Spezia, and even now for us in early pre-season, if you're not convinced, and I think you'll see someone who's more than capable of stepping into the type of zones that Zinchenko does in our heads. On that, as this team evolves, I think we need to evolve our language around it too. That could be a whole video in itself, but I think we should try and move away from positional labels, something you'll notice that I'm using less and less in my analysis. Because to me, to describe what Arsenal are doing, they're becoming more and more redundant. Kiwior is comfortable playing in these areas. What does that mean in reality? He moves well in there, receives well in there, the angles suit him, and he feels confident. That means he could fill a number of functions in our team, and he can certainly step into midfield a la Zinchenko, which would probably be the first protestation to him replacing Alex. Perhaps it would be without the same confidence receiving between the lines or with his back to goal, but he has a very reliable switch out to the far hand side from midfield and can punch the ball between the lines reliably. It's just going to be a different style. And on the other side, Timber can carry like Zinchenko if we're missing that. Also, Kiwior is an athlete. He's broken the short sprint record, highest agility jump and standing spring jump records at Arsenal since coming into the club. And when you consider the types of athletes that have been at Arsenal over the years, like prime Hector Bellerin, Theo Walcott and Thierry Henry just in terms of pace, that is an incredible feat. He is physically at the level, with broad shoulders and, as George on our podcast puts it, fluid hips. Defensively, he's terrific in a number of zones too, as when he's pulled out wide, he's really capable of dealing with wide men 1v1, and centrally, having played in those zones a lot. Kiwior won 69% of his ground duels last season in the Premier League, with Saliba winning 67%. Admittedly, Saliba has a larger sample size, but Kiwior had to move around positionally. Put it this way, at the end of last season, when it was revealed Zinchenko wouldn't make the final 3 games, Tierney was available and played against Brighton, but then Arteta went for Jakub for the final 2. But the thing that makes me really sure we'll see more Kiwior next season isn't actually his capacity to do the job. It's more the environment that Arteta is creating around him. We spoke briefly earlier about Havertz's new positions and what that might mean for Tierney, but what might it mean for Kiwior? Just with my eyes from a small sample, I feel Havertz will have a more free attacking role in our team, possibly with less rigidity than Xhaka, and Havertz is certainly less able under contact than Granit. Losing our second ball hoover makes me worry, and I think that may mean a more defensively solid left back than Zinchenko makes more sense in the balance of the team on that left hand side. Secondly, we've just put down our record transfer fee on a midfielder with a slight left-sided bias. You saw in the game against Man United that Rice found himself drifting to the left, as he has done at West Ham. Maybe when playing with Zinchenko it'll change, but their heat maps in the league last season show a remarkable similarity, though we must consider Rice would have been defending more. Regardless, I feel Declan's better and more comfortable on that side, not least because he's better with the ball kicking away from his body towards the right, in my view, unlike say a Ramsdale, who I think is better kicking across his body towards the left. If Rice is filling up those zones, does that encroach on Zinchenko's spaces, meaning that we need to invert on the other side? And is that where, finally, Timber comes in? With the inversion coming on the right, you simply can't have Zinchenko coming in on the left too. So who goes to the left exterior of our defence? The answer to that rhetorical question is Kiwior. But other options are available, of course. I respect those opinions. Could be Tierney. I've seen some shouts that Timber can go there. Seen some Gabriel shouts. And I think Tomiyasu will play minutes there too, but he's a little bit less athletic than Kiwior, and I don't see his best qualities coming supporting an attack, which I think Kiwior could grow into, a la Ben White. Or maybe Zinchenko plays every minute next season, and this was a complete waste of everyone's time. But my suspicion is no. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Final thing. You've probably seen this quote going around about Kivior about how he's going to redefine our way of playing, right? Now that is an incredibly exciting quote, and I'm sure there's some of you who've been waiting for me to address that. It would be exciting if Arteta actually said it. In researching this video, I discovered it was a misprint on Arsenal.com that got picked up. Here's what Arteta actually said about adaptation.
With Jakub, a young talent with incredible potential that is going to adapt really well to our way of playing, and we didn't have a backup centre-back for the whole season.
There you go. I don't know whether Kivior will play 10, 20, 500, 1,000, 4,000 minutes next season, and I don't think anyone knows. We can't predict the future. What I do know is Mikel will stop at nothing to reduce the weaknesses in this team. And if that means seeing Kivior more to address those, so be it. I think he's more than capable, and who knows, we may be looking at him as a fairly permanent fixture in our team next season, with an exit for Zinchenko sooner than we think. A month ago, I would have wanted Caicedo in this team, and now, I don't think we need him. A week ago, I was telling all my mates I'm not getting the home shirt this season. And now look at me. Football and life changes quickly, so let's be open to new solutions.